Hi, Margie Island here, leadership psychologist and passionate about creating happy, healthy, and high performing leaders. Let's talk about the evidence. Below, I'm sharing key insights from recent research on leadership burnout from 24 peer-reviewed studies over the last 10 years. I'm not going to go into detail with you here. You can see them below, and also there's a link to the reference list if you want to take a deeper dive. I do just want to address a couple of things that I haven't yet. And the first one is self-medicating when you are navigating burnout. And this is quite common. So using things like alcohol, prescription drugs, non-prescription drugs, getting into a bad diet, over-exercising, under-exercising, streaming, doom scrolling, the list continues. So now we do those because they kind of help in the short term. And I know this because Chardonnay was definitely my go-to. But then it started to become more of a hindrance than a help. So I decided to quit Chardonnay and alcohol 8 years ago, and I've never looked back. I'd encourage you to have a look at your own stress coping strategies, and that's whether you aren't in burnout, you might be in burnout, or you definitely are. As I've mentioned a number of times, burnout is caused by stuff outside your control. Systemic issues, the things that are around you. The one thing you do have control of, though, is this. So what are you doing that's not helping? And what do you know you need to do more of? Other thing is that 1 in 5 Australians have a mental health condition. And if you put that into the workforce, that suggests 20%. Now, burnout doesn't necessarily cause a mental health condition, but what it can do is make navigating one a lot more difficult. So just something to keep in mind. So let's talk about what actually works. The first thing is having this proactive approach and running psychoeducation programs. So that's things like workshops, information sessions, resources that help executive leaders and leadership teams able to understand and spot burnout in themselves and others and what to do about it. Really important. Secondly, an approach that's getting some great outcomes is called psychological flexibility, and it's part of acceptance commitment training. In summary, what it does is it helps leaders have a more flexible mindset around how they manage stress, how they perceive stress, and then how they behave. I've got some great case studies using this approach, and there's more on the reference list. But it's a newer approach, highly effective. Psychologically informed coaching. Now, the reason this is has good outcomes is when we're navigating burnout, we're looking at things like stress, anxiety, pressure, and behavior. And having that training and be able to spot things that might be a bit more below the surface or underlying issues can be incredibly helpful in solving this problem. And there's even an example there below where there was a statistically significant result, which means it actually worked, of mental health improvements from doing 8.7 hours of coaching with a qualified professional. Last thing is having an embedded approach. And that means having coaches, whether they're permanent staff or contracted in, embedded in the organisation. And this is because this allows the people supporting you to get a much better idea of the context. Like, what are the external things that are pushing up against your executive leaders and your leadership teams? So it really helps from that perspective. The other thing is that we start to see change occurring at that sort of 6 to 12 month mark. And then if you can, continuing along another 6 months where you can really start to embed that change. That's where the evidence tends to sit. So I'm hoping that you've gotten some value from this series, and looking at some new ways that you can approach dealing with this problem, and some research to back you up if you go into the fray, because I get it. If you're having to tell your board or your CEO that their leadership style is driving burnout, takes a bit of guts. Uh, and it also means possibly challenging a really old status quo. Have a think about this. Do you have an organization that has burnout as some kind of badge of honor? I've seen it. And so have a think about, how that could be influencing unwanted turnover and good people walking out the door. Last thing I want to leave you with is, after 15 years in a previous life in executive recruitment, and now a decade as a leadership psychologist, one truth remains: people don't leave jobs, people leave leaders. 2026 can be different for you, but only if you address the problem. So, what's it going to be? Feel free to reach out if you need some help. Bye for now.